Today, we're going to open up a little bit of a can of worms. Is it really worth it to pay top dollar for a specific PA or brand? We all know we need to pick the right product within a product line, but is it worth the extra money? Is it worth double, 4 times, 5x what it might be? Does the same 90 by 90 12-inch woofer from brand A, and then brand B has the same 90 by 90 12-inch point source, and it's 3 times the price, is it worth it? What are you getting when you're investing more? So I want to talk about that. What are the actual things you're gaining by investing more money? Is it worth it? I know we all have our own ears and preferences about just how specific manufacturers make their product and how they sound, but what else is a part of the equation? I promise none of this is a moral judgment on someone who's naturally inclined to get a cheaper product because they can't afford something, or they just really love a mid-tier product that has a lot of value, or just want to know that they have the best of the best. These are all viable things. I just want to open up this conversation and see maybe what's a different way to approach and thinking about how you're investing your hard-earned dollar in something that you're going to purchase for the long haul. Because again, most of the time, this is a long-term investment, and I want you to come armed with all the right questions and things to think about from a performance standpoint, from a relationship building standpoint, the specific brand, and I just want to unpack this a little bit more. So let's jump in. I've got a few caveats first, then we'll jump into our main conversation. First, there's plenty of quality brands out there, and I haven't worked with everything. There's probably more great things out there that I've not touched than I have. So the brands that I am going to mention in here in specific use cases, it's just what I've touched, I have experience with. So I'm not trying to, on purpose, promote one over the other. It's just from my own experience. Second, price does not equal value. And what I mean by that, it's not a linear comparison. If you pay more, you get more. There are some products out there that I've used that are really expensive that I wasn't all that impressed with, and vice versa. There are some companies who have positioned themselves as maybe of a low or mid-tier or mid-budget option that I thought sounded incredible. So what I would just encourage you to do is maybe drop some inhibitions about money necessarily being attached to this, and think about who is making a really quality product, and that can be available to everyone at every price point. Again, usually more money means you have more R&D, you can hire better talent, better materials, and that should add up to a good product, but that's not always the case. And lastly, at the end of the day, talent, experience, and expertise win. I would definitely trust a top-notch systems engineer with a mid-tier system versus someone who maybe isn't as experienced or doesn't have as good of an ear with a Rolls-Royce PA. So bottom line, what you do have control over is yourself, you getting better, you developing an understanding of measurement and your ear, and then you can always transfer that to any PA you come up with. But maybe you're watching this, you're a production company who's looking to buy some equipment, or maybe a church or a venue. Should you spend that extra money? And we're just going to talk through what is worth paying for, in my opinion. All right. Please kindly fact check me if I get anything wrong. If you're a brand that I talk about in this video, or just someone who has something to say, please fact check me. I'm more than happy to make corrections or make sure I'm sharing information that's accurate. I want to represent brands and people well. All right. So first thing that I think you end up paying for when you get a quality product is Directivity performance. And what do I mean by that? So if you've seen other videos, you've seen me use my humble little Fostex speaker. This is a studio speaker. It's not meant for live sound, but I just did a little test with this. So this is a microphone a little over a foot away, maybe close to 2 feet, and I measured it. So the green trace is on axis, so just like you saw in that picture, and then the magenta or purple, pink trace, whatever, is me rotating the speaker 45 degrees, and then I rotated another 45 to 90 degrees off axis. So it's basically simulating moving off axis of the speaker. And we see here in the upper frequencies changes. The lows and low mids stay pretty much the same because they're going to move in a not quite spherical, but more omnidirectional pattern. But speakers, their published specs, let's call it a 75 by 75 degree speaker, we should have a smooth transition through the high frequency roll off throughout that range. So more budget speakers are going to have a much more jagged and not even roll off compared to speakers that are really built well. So again, I'm not trying to pick on Fostex here. This is not a live speaker. They only made this speaker for it to be meant to be used on axis. But we see a pretty severe drop off in the very highest frequencies when we move 45 degrees off axis. And that's really hard to do, to get super high frequencies very even across the horn or the coverage pattern. So this is definitely something I found on one of Fulcrum Acoustics' video. This is actually a screenshot from one of theirs, and this is something they emphasize with their speakers. They really try to make sure, with the combination of their TQ processing and how they design their speakers physically and the components that they use, that is a smooth transition throughout the range. And I like that they publish that here. So having parallel lines that are moving in similar manner is something you want to look at. And so the point I want to bring up here is brands that publish data in an ethical manner, let you see it like, hey, this is how our product's performing. That's a good sign. A lot of manufacturers do this, but on the other hand, it's easy to skew data a little bit. And so you kind of have to know what to look for and see what the terms are. But that being said, that is one thing you're paying for in a quality speaker, is that as you move off axis, it is a smooth transition. You're not seeing this jagged thing. So these parallel lines as you move through it is something you want to look for. You can also look at this in a different way through polar plots. So this is Fulcrum Acoustics, their CCX1595 speaker. It's actually a passive cardioid box, so we're not looking at the low end here, but we can see all these frequency ranges are trending in a similar shape to what we're asking this to do. So this is the horizontal coverage of the box, so 90 degrees. So these looking all really similar throughout, basically where the horn is taking over, or the compression drivers are taking over, is really good information. So this is telling me that this product is doing as it describes. Next up, we have linear frequency and transient response at all volumes. All right, so I bring this up because most of us have probably used this speaker. This is a JBL VRX. I think this is the 932 LAP here in this picture. So this box, it's a 15 by 100 degree constant curvature setup. It can get the job done, but my biggest gripe with it is if I have to push it loud, it starts to get kind of bitey and makes you want to squint a little bit. Again, JBL, their A12 and A8 series, phenomenal box. I got to work with, or at least help someone measure their new SRX 906 boxes, phenomenal. But this specific one, when I push it loud, I don't like the way it sounds. I feel like it gets too bitey, too sharp, and just a little bit abrasive, but it's not that way at low volumes. So if you're paying for a higher quality product, you're just gonna be able to have much more linearity and less distortion throughout the range at very low volumes compared to very high. So that's also something that's worth it when maybe you have material that you're mixing often that has a wide dynamic range. You're going to get the same result. I will say that the human ear is a bigger variable in how it perceives loudness due to the Fletcher-Munson curve than the loudspeaker itself. But I'm just pointing out this specific box, I do feel like it changes in tonality depending on the SPL. Number 3 up is processing granularity. So I did a wonderful video series with Michael Lawrence, and this is a graphic from his presentation talking about his rig. So he's divided up these zones, the 100 to 200 sections into A and B, the back part of the floor into C, and the bottom into D. So those are kind of the macro groups, but even within that, each individual box is able to have processing on it, aka one of the things we're using is a high shelf to feather the frequency response. So we can see the target trace here is the white trace, and we see front to back, even all the way down to 63 Hertz with just the mains, is tracking very well along that trace. And so we want to make sure all the traces in those zones get to target. So the first trace, we see all the zones are a little bit below it. And then on the second one right here, we see along each of the macro elements, so on all the A boxes, all the B boxes, all the C, and all the D, we're able to use a high shelf to bump things up. And then Michael feathered in each box to make it fall to where front to back, all the way from the barricade all the way to the back of the 200 section is even. So having more processing available to you, and especially on a per box, maybe a 2 box per zone basis, gives you the opportunity to make a smoother array. And also, this goes without saying, but having a bigger budget also means you have more boxes, which gives you the opportunity, at least on a line array context, to be able to shape the full frequency spectrum down, they get the same coverage shape at all frequencies, which is really hard to do with a short line or not very many boxes. So kind of 2 points in one. You get processing granularity if you have a lot of boxes, which requires more output, which is more outputs, which is more cost, but then also more boxes, which is more cost. So it's not just about can I get more boxes for more SPL, but it also can contribute to getting a more even response throughout the audience. Next, SPL specs matching real life. So I pulled this from the M-Noise video from Meyer, but this is a bunch of different manufacturers that they state their maximum SPL or peak SPL or whatever. It's the maximum output. The peak, is it continuous? It's very confusing and is at a specific distance and specific power input. And so it's hard to compare apples to apples from a spec sheet. So that's why Meyer first made M-Noise, and now it's basically given this, I'm not sure the official relationship, but it's now AES 75, which is a testing procedure that helps you find the maximum SPL of any given box. I'm not going to go through it in detail here, but basically you're looking for it taken at a linear level that it can stay and pushed, and you end up pushing the level until you see one of the drivers of the frequency response dip 2 dB. Again, that's a vast oversimplification, but if we started at that pink trace, and then we took another after we increase the level by 3 dB, then offset it by 2 dB, we're going to keep pushing the level and measure the SPL until we see it dip down, or actually we see a drop in coherence below a certain amount, which I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, if you go to the mnoise.com website or Google AES 75 or look for that on Meyer's website, they have a really detailed walkthrough of how to do it. But this is going to be the best way to figure out the actual maximum SPL of the product that you have and compare apples to apples, because we can look at spec sheets all day, but it's not really going to shake out until you have it in the field with a box right next to another and verify it that way. And why M-Noise versus pink noise is that since most of the time we're mixing music on boxes, the crest factor of music in the high frequencies is much different than pink noise. We actually have increasing crest factor with frequency. So we want to be able to emulate that. So that's why Meyer developed M-Noise and then gave this as a testing procedure so we can have better data about how the maximum SPL of different products stack up against each other. Next, we have longevity and robustness. So this is the International House of Prayer in Kansas City. I'm not sure when this picture was taken. They've recently upgraded PAs to, I think, the JBL A series. And from the engineers that I know there, it sounds fantastic. But before that, they had a Meyer array. And so if you're not familiar with the International House of Prayer, it's running 24/7, 365 days a year. And so there's music or something happening on these speakers constantly. They do not get a break. And I think they had that previous Meyer system close to 15 years. I need to double check on that, but that's a long time for a speaker to be acting 24/7. So if you're thinking about purchasing a system and you're like, just kind of balking at the price tag, I'm not saying you need to go in debt or make a stupid decision, but think about the longevity of the purchase. Are you prepared to use this for the next 10, 15, even 20 years? And by buying a quality product, it's going to be able to do that. So that was just a use case here of a product lasting a long time. And I hope the JBL product lasts just as long. Next up is flexible connectivity. Here's what I mean by that is we have these standards, Dante, audio over IP. There's also AVB Milan. And the bottom right here, I have Meyer's Panther box, which is just one of many boxes that you're able to go directly into audio transport over network over AVB. It's converted at the box, hits the power amp, and comes out the speaker. So you're not worrying about driveline lengths, compensating for that with NO4. Again, this requires a topology of the speakers being active to do it this way, but even transporting audio from the DSP to amp racks can also happen over IP, which I think just reduces the amount of cables you have to run, depending on who you ask, could be a little bit more robust and reliable, but at the end of the day, you want to have an analog backup if you're running this anyway. All that being said, usually more expensive box. I mean, it requires money to create these cards and audio transport systems. So if you have a very large system you're having to manage or very complicated from a routing standpoint, having an option that does digital audio transport over IP is really a cool solution if that can simplify your workflow. Next is trustworthy prediction software and optimization workflows. So you've seen my videos, I use Map3D a lot. I've actually only ever done one show with Meyer gears. I had my hands on it, but as a learning tool, Map3D is amazing because you can put virtual microphones in the space, you can see phase data, you have a lot of products to mess around with. And so whether you like the sound of their product line or not, I think it's still a fantastic learning tool in that environment. And then you can also integrate with their Galaxy processors and control things right from that session and almost not do a pre-tuning, but kind of set up your Galaxy how you want it, take it online with the rig, and away you go, which is pretty cool. So being able to have that amount of control and prep work in a united ecosystem definitely takes resources to pull that off. I mean, there's also array calc from D&B, there's sound vision, whatever, but to be able to have a robust environment where you can do prediction is a really valuable asset. So there's also Ease, which is made by AFMG, which you can have a lot of manufacturers make the GLL file that you can bring it into, but they have to pay to license that to AFMG and bring it in. So it takes resources to do that, but it makes our job infinitely easier because we already know the riggers are already waiting us to get the PA in the air. So as much as we can plan and practice and experiment in advance with software that is truthful and accurate is really helpful. All right, moving on here. I think this is my last point is customer and application support. I love this little cartoon. The customer is always right, on the verge of making me lose my mind. And I'm sure I've probably made several customer support people think this, but I've had great luck with recent brands I've worked with, just asking them more about their products as I'm starting to spec more systems. So that's been Martin in recent conversations. That's been Adamson, which has been cool getting to know those people. I want to give a specific shout out to Hannah Goodine at Rational Acoustics. I've sent her many messages and emails like, hey, I broke this and help me out. And so companies that have real people that are accessible and can quickly solve your problems is super helpful. Casey in the licensing department at Rational helped me recently because I somehow fat-fingered and deactivated my Smart Suite. I have no idea how that happened, but they got it resolved quickly for me. And so being able to have knowledge of people that are helpful, that know their product well and are available takes resources. And so when you're going with a mid to upper tier brand, that's what they can do. So when choosing products, that's definitely part of the conversation is like, how can I look at the entire ecosystem of the people I'm going to be interacting with as I get this product and making further decisions. So I like, before I make a purchase decision or make one on behalf of one of my clients, I like to get to know the manufacturer. What's their ethos? What's their approach? Are they helpful in answering my questions? Are they responsive within reason? I know we all have lives, but that is definitely part of the equation. And it usually takes a mid to upper tier brand to be able to pull that off and have the resources to do so to staff those positions. All right, so here's a recap. Again, price does not equal value. I'm not saying you should go into a bunch of debt or only pay for top tier stuff because John Mayer can still make a Squier Strat sound amazing. And so on one side of the coin, we have the tone is in the fingers argument. If you're a guitar player, that an incredible guitarist is still going to make a cheap guitar sing. But at the same time, if you have a talented individual with quality, trustworthy gear, you are going to get a better result. So don't just look for the middle of the road option. Don't look for the top tier option. Talk to people, hear the product, go to demos, ask them to show you the data, verify their workflows. I mean, they don't have to open up the entire black box if they don't want to, but just ask good questions. Measure it yourself. That will give you infinitely more data and ways to contextualize your decision-making process when you're buying equipment versus just trusting what's in a Reddit thread. All right. So next, I would trust manufacturers who ethically show their work. I feel like manufacturers who say, here's all this data so you can see how this product's performing and we've done that work for you, shows me that they're proud of their product and they're happy to show you everything. Manufacturers hold everything very close to their chest and everything is some weird patented term and they're not showing a lot of data. Gives me personally pause. I understand how some people don't want to unveil all of their trade secrets or just have a certain company ethos. But to me personally, it speaks better when companies are showing their work and it's not just a bunch of terms that are hard to understand, a bunch of proprietary technology that really doesn't explain to me what's happening. Third, speakers and PA systems are a long-term investment. So the sticker shock up front is usually like, wow, this is going to be $100,000 PA or whatever it is, or $1 million PA if you're getting a huge touring rig. But just know that you need to look at the ROI for yourself and what you are going to use it for. So it's easy to say like, oh man, that's just so far out of my price range, or why would anyone spend that type of money? But for someone's specific context, what they're using it for, the return they're able to get, it may make sense. Again, it's a long-term purchase. The IHOP had their Meyer PA for 15, 20 years, which is really cool. It's a good use of that resource. Number 4 is build a relationship with brands. And because brands are actually just coordinated groups of humans working on a project together. So we think about Martin, Meyer, L Acoustics, D&B. These are just humans who all centered around a common ethos and believe in a specific product that they are making. So get to know them. I've had a lot of conversations recently with manufacturers I haven't worked with yet because I'm looking to build new relationships for choosing to spec gear for designs I'm working on. I want to expand the amount of products I know about and get the perfect product for my client. So knowing about more of them, really asking specific questions about use cases and price points and what they're good at is super helpful. And so I've had fantastic experiences as of late just doing this, getting to know brands and ask good questions. And that's been really helpful for me understanding those products. All right. Thanks for hanging out and walking through this with me. I'd be happy to listen to any pushback or your thoughts. Please also let me know something that I've missed in the comments of like, what else are you getting when you choose to invest into a mid or upper tier brand? My name is Michael Curtis. I appreciate your time. Thanks for being here, and I'll catch you next time.